Hello and welcome to a new episode of Khan's podcast. We apologize for the delay in new content, as the last few months have been a busy time for our channel. From now on, we want to bring you episodes that are extended versions of some of our recent documentaries. We think that by listening to the history of the Oghuz, Uyghurs, Khazars and so on, you can perhaps experience ancient and medieval Turkic history in a way that is simply not possible by watching a video. So, whether you are off for a walk or are seated in a train, whether you are listening while flying away or relaxing on your sofa in the living room, enjoy this new episode in which we tell you the origins, rise and fall of the mighty Khazar Empire. If you like this episode and our podcast in general, don't forget to give a thumbs up on Spotify and 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music. Following the fragmentation of the Göktürk empires, new successor states were carved out in Mongolia and the Altai region by the Uyghurs and to some extent the Kyrgyz. Yet the proliferation of Turkic states was not confined to the east. They spread across the entire breadth of the Eurasian steppe belt, extending further west. One such entity was the Khazar Empire, which found itself under the auspices of a branch of the Western Turkic Empire from the 7th century. This suggests that the leadership of the Khazars was likely drawn from the celebrated Ashkenazi dynasty. Over the course of a century, the Khazars expanded their influence far and wide, reaching as far as Kiev in the west, the Volga in the north, and the Kazakh steppe in the east. Despite the extensive geographical range, the Khazars maintained their nomadic lifestyle. However, the societal fabric underwent a transformative phase. Numerous Khazars, initially followers of Tengrism, converted to Christianity and subsequently to Judaism. This brings us to some intriguing questions. Can the Khazar Empire be characterized as a Jewish empire as a result of this religious transition? Did the ordinary populace also embrace Judaism? And how much credence can be given to the assertion that the Jews of Eastern Europe descend from the Khazars? These are questions that invite thoughtful deliberation. Of all the successor states born from the fragmentation of the Göktürk Empire, it was the Khazar Empire that positioned itself furthest westward, straddling the frontier between Europe and Asia. Anchored between the Volga River and the Caucasus, its historical lineage can be traced back to the mid-7th century, during a time of great regional upheaval and shifting powers. The genesis of the Khazar identity is intricately tied to the demise of the first Göktürk state, a nomadic empire that had its roots in the 6th century. The Göktürks, by the year 580 CE, had stretched their reach as far as Ukraine, demonstrating the strength and mobility of their horse-riding warriors. In alliance with the Turkic Oghuz Federation, they even laid siege to Cherson on the Crimean Peninsula, a Byzantine stronghold. We will refer to the Byzantines as Eastern Romans from now on, as that would be the correct historical term. In order not to confuse the Göktürks with other Turkic peoples, such as the Khazars, we will stick with that name nonetheless. Over time, the Romans and the Göktürks, recognizing the shared threat of the Sasanian Persian Empire, forged a strategic alliance. In 627, at the height of hostilities between the Romans and Persians, the Göktürks actively intervened. Tong Yabgu, the king of the Western Göktürks, led the siege of several cities in Georgia and Armenia, displaying their military prowess. Tong's aggressive strategy also involved sending his general Borishad to assault the Persians through Azerbaijan by sending out second-in-command Chorpan Tarkan. Chorpan defeated a 10,000-man strong Persian army in southern Azerbaijan. However, this period of Turkic expansion was abruptly ended by Tong's untimely assassination, sending the Turkic armies into retreat amidst political chaos. It is said that Tong would have been killed by his uncle, who was trying to usurp power and take the prestige of Turkic victories on the Caucasus for himself. Needless to say, the plan backfired. To make matters worse, the Eastern Gokturks were in total disarray, because shortly thereafter, by 630, the Eastern Gokturk Empire had been subsumed by the rising Tang dynasty of China, a turn of events which had a profound impact on the balance of power in the region. Concurrently, the Western Empire was teetering on the brink of dissolution due to internal conflicts between pro-Ashina and anti-Ashina tribes. Despite the tumultuous circumstances, Tong Yabgu's ambitions had far-reaching consequences. While he had plans to annex the newly conquered territories in the Caucasus, his death did not signify the complete withdrawal of the Turkic peoples from the region. On the contrary, his war against Persia is thought to have laid the foundation for the Khazar state. By the year 650, amidst the tumult in the east, the Turks in the west embarked on a period of reconsolidation. Slowly but surely, a new Turkic entity emerged, evolving into the Khazar state, which played a significant role in shaping the geopolitical landscape of the region for the centuries to come. Several medieval sources use the term Khazars to denote the Gokturk armies, yet the application of this term to the conflict that spanned from 627 to 629 CE is considered anachronistic. As the Khazars gained notoriety in the 8th century as nomadic Turkic rulers of the Caucasus, contemporary authors and scholars perceived the Khazars and the Gokturks as synonymous entities. While there is a degree of accuracy in this viewpoint, it's important to clarify that the Khazars had not achieved independence prior to 630 CE, before the Gokturk withdrawal from the region. After conquering the lower Volga region to the east and an area between the Danube and the Dnieper to the west, and subduing the Onogur-Bulgar Union, a properly constituted Khazar Khaganate emerged between 650 and 670. It was at this time, interestingly, that the Bulgars, also of Turkic origins, approached Europe under leadership of Kubrat Khan and founded the First Bulgar Empire. In any case, the Khazar Turks became politically independent. Being surrounded by several nomadic peoples such as the Bulgars, Magyars, Oghur and Oghuz, the Khazars were in a peculiar geopolitical situation. That being said, their military prowess and able leadership helped them establish Khazar hegemony in the neighborhood. For the next 300 years, the Khazars would reign as the supreme empire of Eurasia. But with this new location and new neighbors, including many of non-Turkic origin, the society of the Khazars entered a transformation phase with no return. Contrary to the prevailing view, the Khazar state exhibited a less centralized structure than the Gokturk Empire. The Khazar political apparatus was distinguished by its unique dual monarchy, with two key figures at the helm, the Khagan and the Bek, the latter also known as the Khagan Bek. The Khagan essentially held a ceremonial role and was not engaged in the everyday governance or military decisions, whereas the Bek, the active ruler, oversaw state affairs, military strategy, and diplomatic relations. This dualistic structure was likely implemented to ensure a balance of power among the various factions within the Khazar state. The supreme ruler, the Khagan, ostensibly led the empire, but his authority was curtailed by the Bek's presence. During the Gokturk era, the title Bek had been associated with tribal leadership. As the Gokturk empires receded into the annals of history, the lesser nobility, represented by the Beks, endeavored to amplify their influence within the steppe belt hierarchy. The Khazar dual kingship then allowed for a degree of regional autonomy within the empire while preserving a unified identity. Nonetheless, much like numerous other states in the Eurasian steppe belt, The Khazar state was initially organized along tribal lines. It was divided into tribes or clans, each led by its own chieftain. These tribes could wield significant power within the state, especially if they boasted a large population, considerable wealth, or robust military strength. Then, over time, centralization efforts helped concentrate political power. The Bek increasingly adopted the traditional characteristics of a monarch, rendering tribal structures less pivotal. This shift likely occurred under the influence of the urbanized societies with which the Khazars interacted, such as the Eastern Roman Empire, the Islamic Caliphates, and the various Slavic and Germanic kingdoms of Eastern Europe. Known for their military prowess, the Khazars were continuously engaged in warfare with neighboring entities. Their aptitude for swift adaptation in response to evolving military and political landscapes was instrumental to their success. As skilled equestrians and breeders, they maintained a formidable cavalry and established battlefield dominance. Stories abound of Khazar men taking up arms on behalf of other states, most notably the Eastern Roman Empire. However, the Khazar army was perfectly capable of holding its own against neighboring Turkic states, tribes, and tribal confederations, an aspect we will delve deeper into later. The Khazars were not just formidable warriors, but also proficient traders. They controlled vital trade routes, including segments of the Western Silk Road, allowing them to levy taxes on passing goods. Nestled between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, their geographical position made them a strategic hub for trade between East and West. Additionally, a robust agricultural sector underpinned their economy, producing staples like wheat, barley, and millet, which sustained their population and army. This fusion of military might, control of trade routes, and a flourishing agricultural sector rendered the Khazars a prosperous and influential power in Eurasia. Yet, questions remain about the Khazar Empire's rulers. What were their origins? Some evidence suggests a possible linkage between the Ashkenazi dynasty of the First Göktürk Empire and the 7th century Khazar dynasty. One of the most significant turning points in Khazar history, as outlined by Kevin Allen Brooke, the author of The Jews of Khazaria, was their adoption of Judaism. Intriguingly, Brooke notes that the Khazars chose rabbinical Judaism, the more mainstream sect, over Karaism, which was widespread throughout the Islamic world, particularly in Spain, the Eastern Roman Empire, and the later Ottoman Empire until the 16th century. Archaeological findings suggest that Jews had inhabited regions such as the Balkans, the Caucasus, and the northern shores of the Black Sea, along with other areas of Eastern Europe, since Roman times. However, the key catalyst for the Khazars' conversion was the Jewish settlements on the Crimean and Taman peninsulas, encompassing places like Kerch, Feodosia, and Anapa. These predominantly Greek-speaking Jews were integrated during the 7th and 8th centuries. Simultaneously, Khazar country emerged as a refuge for persecuted Jews from across Europe and Asia. The neighboring Eastern Roman Empire enforced baptism several times in the 7th and 8th centuries. This religious pressure prompted many Jews to either embrace Christianity or seek refuge northwards. The Cambridge document, originally titled the Schechter Letter, an anonymous Khazar letter from the Genizah of Cairo, serves as a primary source in this context. This Hebrew letter was unearthed by esteemed Jewish scholar Solomon Schechter in the late 19th century, providing his name to this key source. The Schechter letter narrates a wide range of historical occurrences, painting a vivid picture of the complex interplay between the Khazar Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, and the Kievan Rus. It provides a compelling account of the movement of Jewish populations into Khazar territories. The anonymous author intimates that some Jews, to escape the oppression of idol worshippers, journeyed through Armenia to Khazar territories where they intermarried with the Khazars. These immigrants swiftly assimilated the customs of the Khazars and, as the letter suggests, fought alongside the Turks against other nations. Another wave of Jewish refugees originating from Mesopotamia, also alluded to in the Cambridge document, sought sanctuary within the Khazar domain. But what impact did these migrations have on the Khazar people? According to Brooks' theory, the influx of Jewish settlers in the Khazar Empire played a significant role in spurring the Khazars' conversion to Judaism. This theory is substantiated by a statement from the Arab historian Dimashqi, penned in 1327, indicating that the conversion occurred gradually over time. An alternative, and perhaps more widely accepted theory, posits that the Khazar elite embraced Judaism in a strategic bid to maintain the empire's political independence amidst the Christian, Roman, and Muslim Arab empires. The objective was to retain the region's balance of power. Given the Khazars' geopolitical location, not directly between the Roman and Arab empires, but crucial to the political stability of the region, this theory holds considerable merit. Although it is evident that conversion to Judaism did occur within the empire, the extent of this conversion remains a topic of debate. Did the Jewish faith permeate the everyday populace, or was its influence confined solely to the ruling elites, the Khagan, the Bek, and the members of the royal dynasty? Another related point of interest is the impact of this religious transformation on the Khazars' cultural, political, and societal structures. Ernest Renan's speculations and Arthur Koestler's The 13th Tribe, indeed, generated a lot of debate about the potential origins of Ashkenazi Jews. The Khazar-Ashkenazi hypothesis has been provocative, suggesting a Turkic rather than Semitic origin for a substantial portion of today's Ashkenazi Jews. According to this theory, when the Khazar Empire dissolved, many Khazar Jews sought refuge in Eastern Europe, specifically in regions encompassing modern-day Poland, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. Over time, they supposedly assimilated with local populations, creating the Yiddish-speaking Jewish communities of Europe. This hypothesis has been perceived as controversial and even as a basis for anti-Semitic speculations, especially since it could potentially undermine the historical claim of Jewish people to the land of Israel. Koestler, an Ashkenazi Jew himself, posited this theory not to negate the Jewish connection to Israel, but rather as an attempt to counteract racial theories of Jewish identity, intending to showcase the diverse multicultural origins of the Jewish people. However, the validity of the Khazar-Ashkenazi hypothesis remains a subject of ongoing debate among historians, geneticists, and scholars of Judaic studies. While there is a general consensus that the Khazar Empire did convert to Judaism and that Jewish Khazars migrated into Eastern Europe, it's also acknowledged that other Jewish migrations from Western Europe and the Middle East were occurring simultaneously. Therefore, it is likely that the Ashkenazi Jewish population has a diverse set of origins, including, but not limited to, the Khazars. While the theory of Khazar origins does provide one aspect of the multifaceted history of Ashkenazi Jews, it is critical to remember that this is a complex topic with many overlapping and sometimes contradictory narratives. An important point to stress is that identity, culture, and nationhood are multifaceted concepts often informed as much by shared history, religion, and cultural practice as by blood ties or genetic heritage. But however the relations between Khazars and European Jews might have been, there is another question that we need to address. The second elephant in the room is an obvious one, and this is also a question that we have been asked many times in the past. Just what in the world happened to the Khazars? Where did they go? The trajectory of Khazar power was largely influenced by their foreign relations. much like other Turkic states of the time. After establishing state-like entities in the 7th century, the Khazars expanded their realm, stretching from Kiev in the west to the Aral Sea in the east, controlling significant areas such as the entire Caucasus, Don-Volga region, the Crimean Peninsula, and what is now known as Ukraine. The Khazars established control over the Onogur Federation, successfully quelling a revolt by the newly independent Turkic Bulgars, who had rebelled against Avar rule. This victory was achieved with the help of the Magyars, who guarded the Khaganate's western border. However, by 800 CE, 3 renegade Khazar tribes, known as the Khazars, defected from the empire and allied with the Magyars. Later known as Hungarians, a term Germans derived from Ogur or Onogur, names of the Turkic federations absorbed by the Khazars, the Magyars gained formal independence from Khazar rule around 800. By mid-9th century, they severed ties with the Khaganate entirely, reaching as far as Frankish territories in Central Europe. One word regarding the Onogurs, whose name translates roughly to the 10 Arrows or the 10 Tribes. This was a confederation of Turkic tribes that dwelt in the steppe regions of Eastern Europe during the early medieval period. Their first appearance was immediately after the dissolution of the Hunnic Empire in the 5th century, and their story intersects with that of the Khazars in significant ways. According to Priscus of Panium, the Onogurs, along with other nomadic Turkic tribes like the Kutrigurs and Utigurs, had appeared at the court of the Eastern Roman Empire in Constantinople and sought assistance against the Sabirs. The Sabirs had been driven away from their homeland east of the Volga River by the so-called Avars. Being displaced, they fled further west and in turn drove away the Onogurs and their neighbors. This all took place in the Pontic Caspian steppe, an area that encompasses the modern-day countries of Ukraine, southern Russia, and Kazakhstan. The Onogurs formed a confederation of tribes, perhaps as many as 10, hence the meaning of their name. Their political structure was typically Turkic, featuring a combination of nomadic and semi-nomadic elements. They lived in a mixture of permanent and temporary settlements, depending on the season and their current military or trade activities. We can further assume that they had been Tengrists, like the Khazars. In the 7th century, the power dynamics in the region began to shift. The Khazar Khaganate was rising to prominence, and it absorbed the Onogur Federation. This event marked a significant expansion of Khazar control and territory. It also sparked another migration and dispersal of some Onogur groups. Some of these fleeing Onogur tribes later joined the Magyars, who eventually formed the core of the Hungarian nation. The incorporation of the majority of the Onogurs into the Khazar Empire resulted in significant cultural, linguistic, and political influence. For instance, the Khazars adopted some elements of the Onogur political system and absorbed many of their military strategies. These contributions made the Onogurs a key component in the formation of the Khazar Empire. After the collapse of the Khaganate in the late 10th century, the Onogurs, like many other Turkic tribes, faded from historical records. However, their legacy lived on, especially in the Hungarian nation. Even today, the Onogurs are an essential part of the complex historical and cultural tapestry of Eastern Europe. In the meantime, the Khazar Empire had become a regional powerhouse, strategically positioned between the Eastern Roman Empire and the Arab caliphates. It served as a buffer state. Recognizing this, the Romans proposed an alliance, which was formalized with the marriage of Roman Emperor Constantine V to Tsitzak, or Chichek, the daughter of the Khazar Khagan, Bihar, in the year 730. Their son, Leo IV, also known as Leo the Khazar, was therefore of half-Turkic descent, marking a significant point in Roman-Khazar relations. At the same time, the Muslim Arab Caliphate was keen to expand into the Caucasus. The Khazars, along with other Turkic states, resisted Arab encroachment from 640 until at least 800 CE. The Battle of Balanjar in 652, for instance, saw a decisive Khazar victory. The Khazars honored the body of the slain Arab general Abd al-Rahman, claiming it had the power to affect weather and guarantee victory in war. Despite Arab attempts to reorganize their forces, they faced continuous opposition from local Alan tribes and Roman armies from the west. The Khazar-Arab conflict continued, with significant battles such as the Khazar victory at Ardabil in southern Azerbaijan in 730. However, despite constant reorganization, the Arabs struggled to consolidate their frontier against the Khazars, and medieval Iberia and Albania served as buffer zones between the Turkic Khazars and Muslim Arabs. By the 9th century, the Varangian Rus, who were establishing a warrior merchant system, began exploring the waterways under Khazar and Volga Bulgarian control, drawn by the flow of Arab silver. Some propose that the Rus founded a state modelled after the Khazar Empire, known as the Rus Khaganate. By 860, the Ruses had reached as far as Kiev, believed to have been established by the Khazars. As Roman and Khazar priorities diverged, the Romans stirred both the Alans and the Ruses against the Khazars, hoping to convert the warrior Ruses to Christianity and bring them under Roman control. Ultimately, the Ruses overpowered the Khazars, seizing key locations such as Sarkel and the Khazar capital, Itil, by 970 CE. The decline of the Khazars was marked by their crushing defeat in 965, yet their existence didn't instantaneously fade. In fact, many scholars believe they continued to govern independently in several areas along the Black Sea coast. In 1016, a joint Roman-Rus offensive targeted Georgios Tzul, a local Khazar ruler presiding over a realm severely devastated by the wars of the preceding decades. Despite the importance of Khazaria during this period, precise details about its condition are scant. By the end of the 12th century, Petachia of Ratisbon journeyed through what he referred to as Khazaria, and his accounts suggest an atmosphere of mourning amidst desolation, predominantly inhabited by the Jewish Turkic Karaites. Similarly, the Franciscan missionary William of Rubruck described impoverished pastures where the city of Itil once thrived in the lower Volga area. So, what happened to the inhabitants of Khazaria? Both Jewish and non-Jewish Turks likely migrated or were assimilated by emerging regional powers. The Rus did not seize complete control over Ukraine due to the ascendancy of the Pechenegs, another Turkic tribe which we've previously discussed in our video about the Oghuz Yabgu. Migration presumably occurred predominantly to the west, into Eastern and Central Europe. It is also plausible that some Khazar people remained in the Caucasus, where their state was originally founded. So did Khazars move to Europe after all? We shall discuss this topic in another episode. The Khazar legacy, in any case, is indeed remarkable. Beyond the conspiracy theories of the social media age, the Khazar Khaganate significantly influenced the history of the region and Turkic heritage. It was the only known Jewish Turkic state and stood as a notable Jewish state between the fall of the Second Temple in 70 CE and the establishment of Israel in 1948. Chichek, the mother of Leo the Khazar, brought the distinct Khazar kaftan, or riding habit, to the Byzantine court, which was adopted as a formal aspect of imperial dress. Moreover, the orderly succession system in Kiev's Grand Principate, known as scales, might have been modelled after Khazar institutions, exemplified by the Rus Khaganate. The Khazar Empire's decline along with the dissolution of the Samanids in the east, paved the way for the rise of the Turkish Seljuk Empire, whose founding traditions cite Khazar connections. The Seljuks, a significant Turkish Oghuz dynasty stemming from the Oghuz-Kinnik tribe that emerged in the 11th century, are known to have established a powerful empire covering a vast region from Central Asia to the eastern Mediterranean. Their rise marked the starting point of Turkish ascendancy in the Middle East. In the narratives surrounding the formation of the Seljuk Empire, there are references to Khazar connections. The Seljuks were reportedly descended from the eponymous tribal chief Selyuk, who was believed to have migrated from the Khazar Empire in the northeast of the Caspian Sea. According to these traditions, Selyuk was a commander in the Khazar army before a dispute led him and his followers to leave Khazaria. Upon leaving the Khazar Khaganate, Seljuk and his followers migrated southward, eventually settling near the city of Jend, near the Aral Sea. Here they converted to Sunni Islam under the influence of a local sheikh. Their conversion was a critical turning point, setting the stage for the Seljuks' eventual rise to power as champions of Sunni Islam against both Shia Muslims and the Crusader states in the Levant and beyond. By 1043, the westward expansion of the Turkic Kimeks and Kipchaks pressured the Oghuz, who in turn pushed the Pechenegs west towards Byzantium's Balkan provinces, a domino effect characteristic of Turkic history. The global popularity of Khazar studies arises from the numerous developments and events surrounding the Khazar Khaganate. However, only a single line of the Khazar language has survived to this day. Apart from that, there are no original Khazar sources left. This is a shared fate of nearly all early medieval Turkic peoples, save for the Gökturks and Uyghurs. The line in question says the following: Okurum. It means, I have read.